Okay. Hamitzvah hateshu shmonim hi shetzivo akohanim lecho b'sar hakochim. The mitzvah is a kohanim bedavka. We'll come back to this, Emet Hashem. And he starts off, it's very interesting, b'sar hakochim. So b'sar hakochim could be all kochim, and then, it could have been really Sherish Yud Beis, which the Ram does have in Sherish Yud Beis, but then he says, Kloima hachthאת ואשם, shehem kodshe hakadoshim, which l'chayra limits it to kodshe kodshim. I mean, that's what it is. But you would have said any kodshe kodshim, but that would have included kivsei atzeres. But it's not clear that it includes kivsei. We'll start just before we just get more into it, because of v'ochlu oisam asher kupa b'hem, and we don't know of kapora in kivsei atzeres. So then it should really limit it to chatos and asham. And that's exactly what he says before. Kloima, hachatas va'asham, shehem kodshe kadoshim. So it's very strange. Chatas va'asham and kodshe kodshim. So, you would assume the kodshe kodshim, defines it or helps it, but it really doesn't. Because once you say kodshe kodshim, you could include, it's chatas, it's really kodshe kodshim that are machaper. Okay, I'm just confused, but that's what the word says. Let's just read a little bit, and we'll go into it more. V'amrei v'ochlu oisam asher kupa b'hem, which is by itself very odd, because the pasuk is in miluyim, and l'chayra it's a mitzvah l'shah, and we're learning out of mitzvah days here. V'loshin sifra, minayin shachilas kodshim kapora al kol Yisrael, tamuloyma v'ato nosan lochem, v'oisa nosan lochem es avoin, ho'edo l'chapi aleichem lifnei Hashem, ho'ketzar koyin oichlim, v'Yisrael miskaplim. So, he wants to know, minayin shachilas kodshim kapor kol Yisrael, so quotes a pasuk, okay? But that there's a relation between this and the pasuk in Miluyim, Ches. Okay, but that's what happens over here. V'ochleis shekupa b'hem, achila mechaperes, and that's the mitzvah. Umitanai mitzvah zo, shezoiso achila she mitzvah, omnom tiyeh liyoim v'layla at chatzois. I don't know why we see that chatzois is only the Rabbanon. It's achilas kochim only over Laila. The achakach te'oseh achilas achatos hayi or asham. So again, he's clear that it's chatos or asham. On them ti achilas mitzvah bizman amugbo. Versteht sich? If it's nesal, so there's no mitzvah. Umavuahu. Shemitzvah zo miyuchedes bezichrei kahuna. Now we're limiting, it's not kohanim, but zichrei kahuna. Vein anoshim chayeves bo. Ki kodshe kadoshim. Noshim chayeves was very odd, because noshim can eat kodshe, but not chayeves bo. They're also to eat it. Ki kodshe kadoshim shebo bohem ze akosu. And he says, key. And he answers, he says. But it's not a chayiv. In other words, what it means, then they would have been chayiv if they could have eaten it, but since they can't eat it, therefore they're not. It's a very odd sentence. Okay, let's just go on. Before, the next part, he's going to somehow include in the mitzvah, which is not for us at the moment. We'll pick it up. First, I want to take care of the first half. The second part is a discussion of Achilas Kohanim and Kochim Kalim and Truma, and that includes Noshim, and that somehow it's connected to the mitzvah, but it's not the real thing, because the real thing is Achilas Chatas Noshim. See what all this means, B'li. But at the moment, the focus is on Chatas and Osham. Achilas Kohanim and Chatas and Osham. Now, so again, let's start from the beginning. According to the Rambam here, in mitzvah peites, the mitzvah of achilas kochim is only chatas and osham. Kloima hachatas ve'osham shehein kochi kochim. And it's b'sar akochim. Before we talk menachos, now there's b'sar akochim, and it's chatas and osham. The discussion of chazav v'shoik and truma is later, as we pointed out. However, as we pointed out, the Rambam in Shurish Beis is that achilas korbanos and mitzvah klolos. So, l'cheira, it's koil not only achilas kohanim, but also achilas bailim. And that's what he says in Shurish Beis. It's Sabosai. Le'echol mashioch mimenu. And each one what they eat. The Gemara Psachim on New Testament Aleph seems to be that there's a mitzvah say on the bottom to eat from the korban shlomim. And that would be like the Ram and Shurish Beis, and Rashi's like that in Psachim. Rashi's v'yamaschel b'shayimos hashana. Tichsiv v'yochlo isa mashekupa bohem. Almo achilas kochim asehi bein hane'echolim l'kohanim bein hane'echolim Yisrael. So it's very clear. So that's the Rambam and Shurish Beis and Rashi in Psachim. However, the Rambam over here is very clear that the mitzvah is only Kohanim and it's only Kochim Kochim. There could be a kiyum of achilu and shlomim and achilus bailim and l'cheira. You could have imagined that the achila is part of the akrova. There's a mitzvah of akrova shlomim. Samach zayin. Hish divon shiyeh ma'aser zevach hashlomo atoya haniskar be'omroi v'im zevach shlomo korbonoi. And in Zeis, they quotes in Mitzvah Samar Zayin, Zeis Teres Zevach HaShlomim. And in Zeis Teres Zevach HaShlomim, in Vayikra Zayin, Yud Aleph, is the Pasha of Achilles Bailim. V'im Neder in the Doba Zevach Korbonoi, B'yoyim Akribo, Es Zimchoi, Yochmi Mochras, Vanoisi Menu Yochal. in Vayikra Zayin to Zayin. It could be there's a mitzvah saying the Bailim to finish after the Akrova to Achilas Korbanos, to the Achila. It's part of the Maisa Shlomim. The Ram Maisa Korbanos. Perek Tes Halachir Aleph. When he talks about the Mitzvah Shlomim, he says, V'shach HaShlomim Nechal LeBailein. If you want to look at this more, look in the Avi Ezri, and look at the Maisa Korbanos, Perek Yud, Ois Gimel. So that's all very nice. What it means is that in Sherish Yud Beis, the Etzem mitzvah is on Bailim and on Kohanim. Over here, the mitzvah is on Kohanim, but L'chei Achilas Bailim is part of the Seder of Akrova Shlomim. And there's a mitzvah Akrova Shlomim. And in the Akrova, and in this Teras Zevach HaShlomim, it talks about Achila. Now, the Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Chaf Aleph from an Aleph, there's a Birchas HaMitzvah on Achilas Chagiga Yudalid. Chagigas Yudalid is B'sar Shlomim. So L'cheira, you would have said from the fact that there's a bracha on the Achila, like Rashi, or like the Rambam in Sherish Yud Beis, they're all kosher with Achila. It's not, and we have to understand the Ram Shita, that over here, that the mitzvah of Achila is limited to Achilas Kohanim. So we have to see and think one second. Let me just read to you that there's certainly Kiyum. We'll see one second. Let me just read to you the Rambam in Hilchos Korban Pesach, Perek Yud Halacha Yud Beis. The Rambam says like this: Kishemakrivim es haPesach borishon makrivim imo shlomim biyim abo osa min aboko min atzoin gedolim or ketanim zechol in the kavos kachol zivchei shlomim v'zo hi anikris chagigas abo osa v'azeh nemar b'teira v'zavachta Pesach l'Hashem Elokecho tzoin uboko Emosai mevin imoy chagigazu bizman shehu b'chol ubetaro ubemiut aval im chal yoyim abo also liyos b'Shabbos o shebo Pesach betuma o shehoyu pischei muben ein mevin imo chagiga ve'ein makrivin elo hapsochim bilvad. So here you have to say, so the assumption is, see, this is what I'm just a little bit confused about. I'm not sure which way to go. You see, let's just be, Let me just show you something. Let's see. The problem really starts. You see, in Perek Ches of Hilchos Chomer zu Matzah, Halacha Zayin, v'achar kach mevorich Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher ki ritzon b'tzotzov v'tzivonu al achilas hazevach v'ochlu b'sach hagigas arba'asa tchila u'mevorich Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher ki ritzon b'tzon achilas hapesach v'ochlu migufa shel pesach. You see, the simpler way to have done it, and would have been to say that Achilas HaZevach, even according to the Rambam here in Sefer HaMitzvos, is a kiyum in the Parsha of Shlomim, and therefore there's a bocha, as the Gemara says, talks about the Aseh the Gemara in Nuntes, in Pesachim. The problem is that the Rambam only mentions a bracha and achila is only in Chagigas Yodalit. So to say that it's a kiyum, we don't know any part of Hakovas Hashlom in the brachas, and the Rambam doesn't say anything. The Rambam only talks about achila by truma, and he mentions a bracha. In the end of it, we'll see. So that you could have said it's only achilas kohanim in truma chazav v'shoik. So once the problem of that, someone's just saying, if you would have been presented and there's a bracha, you could have said the bracha is by Shlomim in general. But the Ram only quotes it by Chagigas Yudalid, and you get the impression that Kiyum Achilas Yudalid in order to make that the Pesach is Nechal Aseiva, or whatever that is, and that's the din that you bring it when it's achilosoi mu'at, and in that there's a bracha. So it's not b'torah shlomim, but b'torah yudalid, which is very interesting. It is true that there's a parsha of a zavach the Pesach Hashem Elokecha tzonu boko in order to have the Pesach Nechal Aseiva, but one could have said that it was only a hechsher. And somehow, but the Gemara says the bracha. Question is why? A separate kiyum because of this. What's the hechach? The fact that the Gemara says the bracha. It's just the whole thing is very odd. But see, according to Rashi, it's very simple. Maybe the Ram ensures your base. There's a kiyum and achil shlam in general. But the Ram doesn't quote the bracha about achil shlam. He only quotes it over here. And here I would have said, oh, the hechsher. Say that. Okay, let's go on. Leave it. So then the Ram says, Lecho besar hakochim. He shetzivonu hakohanim. Lecho. So kohanim, l'chayil, it's not like Sherish Beis, we said. Lecho besar hakochim. And that the mitzvah again is achilas chatos and oshem bedavka. Shorim and ochra is the separate mitzvah. The question is, you see, this needs work. You see, that achilas shor menochos are not part of this mitzvah. Achilas mincha is not a mechaper. You see, I would have said a priori, achilas shor menochos and achilas shalmei kivsi atzeres is the same. But in shor menochos is a mefuish pasuk. So it's only because we have the Matiki Ashmor said that it's doich, that the same way that Yibom is doich, was futra and chuvutra, and it's a mitzvah. Here also a mitzvah. We don't have that by Kivsei Atzeres, whatever. But l'chayr it's a double portion that the mitzvah of Shor Menochos is not the mitzvah of achilas chatas nosham, because chatas nosham mechaper. See, the more interesting question in the Sherishid Beis, you would have said that achilas menochos and achilas kochin should have been two separate mitzvahs. It's a very interesting question. We have no clue about this. Because all he says in Sherishid Beis is the achila mashiocha mimenu. So it could have been Shlom Minochet. It's supposed to lecho mashioch mimenu. Nice. So here's interesting. You see, we were talking about Sherishid Beis as a reflection of how you define the mitzvah. But maybe it's more than that. And maybe according to Sherishid Beis, Shori Minochos and Chatos and Osham should be two separate mitzvahs. And it shows your base, it's only one mitzvah. Here it's certainly two mitzvahs, and shows your base, it should be only one mitzvah, maybe. So, here clearly the Rambam is excluding Kivsi Atzeres, because the Rambam says, Kleima, Achatas Va'ashim, Shein Koche Kochim, V'ochel Shekuba Behem. In the Prote Mitzvahs and Maisa Kobonis, he says, Sheyochel HaKohanim, B'sar Koche Kochim B'mikdosh. Once you say that, you could have included Zivche Shal Metzibos. You don't know where you're standing. In Miluyim, this v'ochel is shekuba v'hem, in Shmos Chavtes, Lamed Beis, v'ochel Aaron ubonav es basal ayu, v'es halechem asher basal, Pesach ol moed, v'ochel isam asher kuba v'hem, Lamale is yodom, lekadish isam bezolo yochel kikoydeshem. So the two psukim, Lamed Beis and Lamed Gimel. And lechem in this, but it's a very different thing. V'ochel isa, v'ochel aroin, ubonov. It's very interesting. V'ochel aroin ubonov es basal ayil, v'es halechem, asher basal pesach ol moed, which l'chayre is a tzivu l'shah. And then there's a generic pasuk, which happens to be in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Miluyim, v'ochel isa meshekubo, l'malei es yodam, l'kadosh isa mazol yochel kodeshem. So you would have said, no, it's a mitzvah deis. But then in the middle it says, l'malei yodam l'kadosh isa. Which l'chayre, then it's a very odd thing that the achila in Miluyim had two tafkidim. It was not only achila mechaperes, it was l'mali yodam l'kadesh oisam. But the daylight, the mitzvah is v'ochel is shekupa v'hem. Very odd. Split the pasuk in half of its l'deres and half of its l'shah. Say that. Now, go on. Let's go back and just see the text. The Ram starts off, the mitzvah says, he says the mitzvah is, V'hu amroi v'ochel es shekuba b'hem. And that's a pasuk by Miluyim. So the Chayyim should have stopped over here. Then he quotes a Sifra with a completely different pasuk. We have to know how the two things fit together. Uminayin shachilas kochim kaporo al kol Yisrael. Tamuloimo v'oisa nosa lochem loseis es avoin ho'eido lechape alechem lifnei Hashem o ketzer kol noichlin v'Yisrael miskaprim. So the first one is in the Bava Hipuch. It could be a tzivui or just a story. Those that are miskaper, and the Chatas the Osham is not those of miskaper, it's the achila, but the others are miskaper da'alkom. And in the second Teres Kohanim is not talking about a tzivah at all. It's just telling you a story that achilas kochim are miskaper kol Yisrael. And according to different pasuk, minayin shachilas kochim kapor kol Yisrael. Tamuloimo v'oisa nosan lochem loses zavuino eido lechape aleichem livnei Hashem. Oketzad hakoin moichlim ubaylim miskaprim. So again, let's just see what we have. The Ochlois is a pasuk in Parshas Miluyim, which is a Lasho. So we have to know how this pasuk could be in Minyan HaMitzvahs. Lasho in Shur Shlishi is very clear that it's not Minyan HaMitzvahs. In Miluyim, Moshe was the makriv of the korbanos, and the achilas Aaron ubonov in the korbanos were b'teres bala korban, not b'teres kayin. So how can we learn a mitzvah of achilas kohanim from achilas Aaron ubonov? Look at Briskerov, Chdushi agrees, the Sirim Mem Daled. According to the Rambam, the mitzvah of Achilas B'sar Korbanos is only Achilas Kohanim Mechatas and Osham. In Pasuk Lamed Beis, the Pasuk V'ochel Oisam Asher Kuba Behen. The Pasuk before this, V'ochel Aaron Uvonov Es B'sar Ha'ayil V'es Alechem Asher Basar Pesach Ol Moed. And it said on El HaMiluyim with Shlomim, on the Lechem, which were L'cheira and Ashes, whatever. But it wasn't Chatas Ashim when I mentioned the pasuk at all. So how can you learn the Ochos Shekupa Behen, which was said at Shlomim, and the Lechem Asher Basal, that a mitzvah l'deiros at Chatas and Ashim? So now let's go back to the Sifra. Minayin she'achilas kochin kapor ko Yisrael Talmud loima v'oisa nosan lochem losei zavoin hoeda lechapi alechem lifnei Hashem o ketzad kohanim oichlim v'Yisrael miskaprim. From here, there's no raya that v'ochloiser shekupu b'hem is a mitzvah. It's only a raya that achilas kohanim and chatos nesir rosh chodesh is mechaperes. Kloima means that the etzem achilas kohanim supplements the kapora, and we're talking about sir rosh chodesh. The Rambam the Lush in the Rambam, the beginning of the mitzvah is very difficult to understand. Let's just start at the beginning. He should see kohanim lecho b'sar hakochim kloi machatas v'oshom shein kochi hakadoshim v'omroi v'ochois shekuba behen v'losh sifro minayin she'achilas kochim kapor ko Yisrael tamalom v'oisa nosan lochem losei zavon oedo lechape alechem lifnei Hashem o ketzad kohanim oichlem ba'al miskapim. The Ram quotes the pasuk of the mitzvah is also shekupa b'hem, and quotes the Sifra from a different pasuk b'chlal, and you don't know what it has to do one to the other. So the Pshat and Ram is like this. The Ram learns that you can learn a mitzvah l'teres from the Parshas Miluyim if the etzem tzivui is not limited limited to chinuch hakohanim. Or chinuch hamishkon. But it's a mitzvah neisefes about korbanos. The same way that the Rambam learns from the end of the pasuk, the isa of achila zal deires in loisa sekuf mem ches, and the ma'aser korbanos perik yud aleph aloch ches. Similarly, the beginning of the pasuk ochol shekupa behem, which is not limited to chinuch kohanim, could also be l'deires. Ochel shekupa head is achila mechaperes. In miluyim, only the achilas el amiluyim and the mincha were mechaper. We only know from miluyim that there was a rasha that achilas el amiluyim and the lechem are mechaper. But what is mechaper l'deres? We have no idea. So that the Rambam quotes this siflo that v'oisa nosa lochem los zavoino eidol chape alecha levnei Hashem she'achilas hachatos in the parsha of Siyach Chatos of Rosh Chodesh is a mechaper l'deres. So what's the mechaper l'deres? The mitzvah l'deres is on that. The mitzvah which was said in Meluyim is achila mechaperes. L'shah, it happened to be the elam Meluyim and the sal the lechem shebesal. But the deres we look for the sifra. There's another achilas mechaper, it's Sirosh Chodesh. That we know. And achilas osham, so we know about chatos. We know about chatos of the Sirosh Chodesh. But what about achilas osham? So l'chira, the Ram learns from the pasuk in Pasha Osham in Perek Zayin, pasuk Vav and Zayin, kol zocha b'kohanim yochlena b'mokom kodesh yochal kodesh kodoshim hu kachatos koosham terachas lohem hakoyin asher yechape boy lo yiyeh. Koyin asher yechape boy. So means achilas osham is also mechape. So that goes to the mitzvah l'deres. So if once you learn this, that the achila mechaperes l'shah was the elamiluyim, the salamatzah, the salalechem. L'deres, we learn from Seir Rosh Chodesh that the chatas is a mechaper, and in the pasha it says that osham is like chatos l'chaper. So memela, the mitzvah includes both chatos and osham. See, even though Aaron Abona with the Baal Korban and not of the Makiv Korban by the Miluim, and there was Shlomim and Lechem al matzos. But the achilas miluyim was achila mechaperes, because it says ochel is meshekuba behen, and that is mitzvah deires any achila mechaperes. But the deires is a different achila. It's not the achila because these were kabbalas of asham, but the achilas chatas and asham are mitzvah deires. You could have also learned the mitzvah Medeiros is the fact that Moshe was kayes al Aaron that they didn't eat the Basar Chatos. And the Rashi in Chumash, according to Gemara Menachah, it was Vachim and Daf Kuf Aleph and Aleph, Moshe Koas, because they didn't eat the Chatos of Rosh Chodesh. So why was he koyes? So you would have assumed maybe there's a kiyum mitzvah. They were mekayim the mitzvah. So maybe you see from that the achilas achat is a mitzvah l'deiros. Now, the Rambam in Perik Aleph of Hilchos Ovel, Halacha Aleph, mitzvah seilis abba al korbanos, mitzvah seilat lis abba al koivim, shenemar v'yochalti chatas hayom hayitem v'yirei Hashem. You see, there's a mitzvah, you can have a mitzvah without it, see mufush. And the fact that he's koyes, the raya doch. So you see, he's supposed to do it. And here also, the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was koyes, you see, he's supposed to do it. No. Let's go on. The first approach is much better. This, and the Ram anyway, he quotes the Sifra, so that's the way you should go. Now, the Ram said, Umitnai. Omnom tiye liyom v'laylo at chatzois. Umitnai mitzazo shezei sachila tiye shehi mitzvah eino elo or omnom depending on kapach or not tiye eino elo v'laylo tiye b'yoim u'v'laylo at chatzois. Time mitzu she achila she mitzvah eino elo. So you have a tanai that the mitzvah achila is koche kochim, rak liyom v'laylo at chatzois, and it's rak l'zichri kuna. Okay. Ki koche hakodoshim lo yisechleno oisa hanoshim omnom shah kochim kloima kochim kalim. Okay, now the second part over here. Let's just start reading. Maybe just read it through. We'll pick it up Mitzvah Hashem next week, I think, because I'm not sure I'll be able to finish this. Omnom, Shar Kochim, Kloima, Kochim Kalim, Heim Yochlu Lishnei Yomim V'layla Echot. Zulosi Teido, V'el Nozir, Sheheim Liyoim V'layla At Chatzos. All this chatzos, the chayz the rabbanon. V'yaf al pi sheheim kochim kalim. It means the af pi sheheim kochim kalim goes on. This is the Toida and the El Nazir, that even though it's Kochim Kalim and it has dinim like Kochim, and it's only Yoim V'layla. And even though, and also it's Nechal Anoshim, V'tochal Anoshim Gam Kein. Elu HaKroivi, Elu HaKochim Kalim. V'achilosam Gam Kein, he nigreres. Let's see about that word. He nigreres achra mitzvah. It's not the Ika mitzvah. V'chein gam kein trumo hine achiloso nigreres achra mitzvah. Avol ein achilas hakochim kalim utrumo kmo achilas bosa chatas v'asham is only nigreres. Achilas habosa hazeh min achatas v'asham boy tishalem kapos hamiskape. It's v'ochois and shekupa ben. It's achilas mechaperes kmo shebiar. Uboy bo loshenat sivui b'achiloso. It's a machaper, and on the machaper was said a loshen sivui. Masheloi bo loy bekochim kalim loy betruma. Because there's no sivui mufurish rachilas kochim kohanim sheino machaperes. V'loy betrum. Okay. Ulefikoch he nigres acham mitzvah, because there's no posik mufluish, because it's not achila mechaperes. It's achilas kohanim, which is not mechaper. Acham mitzvah nigres acham mitzvah oicho oisa mitzvah. But the person does a mitzvah, and it's a nigres. And how does he know this? The only way he knows it is from a sifri. He calls it a sifra, but it's a sifri. Here's very important. The reason why the Ram quotes here Truma, the truth is the Ram's not interested in Truma here at all. The Ram's interested in Achilas Kochen Kalam, that Chosev Shoik is in the Geras Acham Mitzvah. But without Truma, he doesn't know it. There's no Raya. So that's what he quotes in the Sifra, which is the Sifri in Kairach, Piska Kuf Tes Zayin, Avoidas Matona Etenes Kunaschem. La'aseis Achilas Kochim Bigvulim Kavoidas Mikdosh B'Mikdosh. Ma avoidus mikdash b'mikdash mekadesh yodav v'achar kach oived achilas kochim b'gvulin mekadesh yodav v'achar kach yochal. So kiyu, it compares it to avoid. There's a kiyum, and once we know there's a kiyum in Achilas Truma, who adin Achilas Kochim Kalim. It's now worse than Truma. Ukva is bayra dina in mitzvah zo bekama mekoymais mizvach. So that's what we have. we'll have to go over and understand the rayas exactly. But the Ram is trying to say that somehow it's included in the mitzvah, but it doesn't fit into the pasuk because the pasuk says "V'achol shekuba b'hem." But since it's called Aveda, so there's a kiyum when it's Nikra Achar Mitzvah. Mitzvah Hashem, I'm not sure, I think we should table this till next week. There's a lot to say over here. And Mitzvah Hashem will pick this up next week. Hatzlocha.